The warship Unbroken Talon hung in the void like a monument to inevitability. For 12,000 years, vessels like it had carried the Dominion's will across the galaxy. Its hull was black as the space between stars, its surface carved with the names of 600 conquered species in their own dead languages. The ship didn't need weapons, though it had them. It didn't need armor, though its shields could withstand a star's corona. It needed only the signal. High Commander Veth Cora stood on the bridge. All four of her arms folded behind her carapace in the posture of certain victory. Around her, the bridge crew worked in perfect silence. No one spoke unless necessary. No one questioned. The Dominion did not tolerate doubt. "Status," she said, her voice like stone grinding against stone. "The human vessel has entered optimal range," reported her tactical officer, a thin Velk, whose skin flickered pale, yellow with anxiety. "They continue broadcasting friendship protocols on all frequencies." Veth Cora's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Friendship? How? Quaint. She had overseen 43 first contacts in her 3 centuries of service. Every single one followed the same pattern. Initial curiosity from the newcomers, polite exchanges. Then, the moment of revelation when they learned they had entered Dominion space. Then came demands for submission, refusal, and finally, inevitably, the signal. After the signal, there was only surrender. The humans would be no different. "Engage visual contact," Veth Cora commanded. The view screen shimmered to life, revealing the human ship. It was smaller than expected, perhaps a quarter the size of the Unbroken Talon. Its design was inelegant, functional, covered in what appeared to be communication arrays and sensor pods, rather than weapon emplacements. Bold letters marked its hull. USS ENDWR. A curious name. Veth Cora filed it away. A moment later, a human face appeared on the screen. Veth Cora studied it with the practiced eye of a conqueror. Bilateral symmetry. 2 eyes, unusual color, like shallow water. Hair atop the head only, graying at the temples. Soft skin, no natural armor. The creature wore a dark blue uniform, with colorful insignia patches. Weak? Like all the others. "This is Captain Sarah, Chen of the United Nations Starship Endeavour," the human said, its mouth moving to form words that the translator rendered in Dominion Standard. "We come in peace, representing the people of Earth. We're honored to make first contact with your civilization." The captain's expression was open, curious. It even appeared to be smiling. A facial gesture Veth Cora's cultural database, identified as indicating friendliness. How tragically innocent. "I am High Commander Veth Cora of the Galactic Dominion," she replied. "You have entered Dominion space. By ancient law and unbreakable precedent, you will submit to Dominion authority. You will provide complete charts of your territory, full technological specifications of your vessels, and biological data on your species. You will accept Dominion governance. These are not negotiations." She watched for the typical reactions: confusion, anger, defensive posturing. Instead, Captain Chen's expression shifted to something thoughtful. "I understand you're presenting your position," Chen said carefully. "However, humanity has its own sovereignty. We'd be happy to discuss trade agreements, cultural exchange, even mutual defense pacts. But we can't simply surrender our independence to an empire we just met. I'm sure you can understand that. Vethkora's secondary eyes narrowed. The human's tone was respectful but firm. It showed no aggression, but also no submission. This one would need the signal. You misunderstand, Vethkora said, her voice dropping to the register that preceded violence. I am not offering options. I am stating reality. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. No species has refused us. No species has survived refusing us. With respect, Commander, Chen replied. There's always a first time. We're not looking for conflict. But we're also not going to kneel to threats. Perhaps we could activate the signal, Vethkora commanded. Her tactical officer hesitated for precisely half a second, an eternity in military time, before complying. Signal active. Commander. Across the void. Invisible and irresistible. The fear weapon reached out toward the human ship. The signal was the Dominion's oldest and darkest secret. Developed by the First Empire from the psychic remnants of a dead species. It was a weapon that bypassed shields, armor, and flesh to strike directly at the mind. It didn't cause pain. It didn't cause injury. It caused knowing. The signal made its targets understand, with absolute certainty, that they were prey. That resistance was futile. That submission was the only escape from the primal, overwhelming terror that filled every thought. It was the fear of being hunted by something vast and unstoppable. The fear of watching everyone you loved consumed. The fear of extinction. No species had ever withstood it. Most surrendered within seconds. The stubborn ones lasted minutes before their minds broke entirely. Vethkora watched the view screen, waiting for Captain Chen to collapse, to scream, to beg. Instead, Chen's expression changed. Her eyes widened slightly. Her breathing quickened. The translator's medical overlay confirmed elevated heart rate, increased cortisol, all the markers of acute stress. But she didn't scream. She blinked several times rapidly. Took a deep breath. Her hands, visible at the edge of the screen, were gripping something out of view. Gripping hard enough that her knuckles went pale. That's... Chen's voice was slightly unsteady. That's quite a sensation you're projecting. Vethkora felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Surprise. You should be incapacitated, she said. I feel it, Chen replied. And now Vethkora could hear the tension in her voice. The human was afraid. It's like being in a dark room knowing something's watching. Like standing at the edge of a cliff. It's terrifying. Then surrender. No. The word hung in space between them. Increase signal intensity, Vethkora commanded. Maximum. Commander, that level has caused permanent psychological damage in. Now? The tactical officer's skin flashed white with fear, but he obeyed. On the view screen, Captain Chen's reaction was immediate. She gasped, her entire body going rigid. Sweat appeared on her forehead. Her jaw clenched. But she stayed standing. Captain. A voice came from off-screen in the human ship. Captain, I'm reading massive psychotropic interference. I know. Chen gritted out. I feel it. Everyone stay at your posts. You. I said stay at your posts. Chen's voice was sharp, but there was something in it that confused Vethkora. Not hysteria. Not breaking. Control. Chen turned back to the screen, And Vethkora saw something in those pale eyes that made her ancient instincts whisper warnings. The human was afraid. Deeply, genuinely afraid. But she was not surrendering. "Commander Vethkora," Chen said, each word carefully measured. "Whatever you're doing, it's cruel. It's psychological torture. And it won't work. Impossible." Vethkora breathed. "We've been afraid before," Chen continued. She was breathing hard, visibly struggling against the signal, but still speaking. "Humanity has faced plagues that killed half our population. Wars that burned continents. We've looked extinction in the face a dozen times. We've been terrified of the dark, of each other, of ourselves." Chen's hand came up to wipe sweat from her brow. The hand was shaking, but it completed the motion. "The thing is," Chen said, and impossibly, horrifyingly, she smiled. A tight, pained smile that held no joy but infinite determination. "We learned something. Fear doesn't have to stop you. You can be absolutely terrified and still do what needs to be done." Silence filled the bridge of the unbroken talon. "We walked on our moon, while knowing we might never return," Chen continued. "We've run into burning buildings to save strangers. We've stood up to tyrants knowing we'd die for it. Not because we weren't afraid. Because being afraid isn't the same as being defeated." Vethkora felt something cold settling into her thorax. "So here's our position, Commander," Chen said, her voice growing steadier, even as the signal continued its assault. "We'll talk. We'll negotiate. We'll be your friends if you'll be ours. But we will not submit. Not today. Not ever." For 12,000 years, the signal had never failed. "Hi, Commander." Vethkora stared at the human captain and realized with creeping certainty that something fundamental had just changed. "Disengage the signal," she said quietly. As the weapon powered down, Captain Chen visibly sagged, gripping her command chair for support. But she stayed standing. "Thank you," Chen said. "Now, shall we start over?" Vethkora's mandibles clicked once, twice. Around her, the bridge crew was silent, but she could feel their confusion, their doubt, radiating like heat. For the first time in 3 centuries, High Commander Vethkora didn't know what to do next. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we shall." The Council of Hierarchs convened in a chamber that had witnessed the subjugation of galaxies. Vethkora stood in the center of the circular hall, her forearms held in the posture of formal report, while 12 of the Dominion's most powerful beings regarded her from elevated thrones. The chamber was designed to intimidate, its ceiling lost in darkness above, its walls lined with the skeletal remains of species that had resisted too long. The bones were arranged in patterns that spelled out a single word in 600 extinct languages. "Submit. Explain," said Hierarch Moxtel, his crystalline body refracting the dim light into sharp, cutting angles. "Explain how a single ship of primitives withstood the signal." Vethkora had anticipated this question. For the 3 days it took to return to the Dominion capital, she had reviewed the sensor logs 100 times. She had questioned her crew under neural scan to ensure no one had tampered with the equipment. The impossible had happened. She could only report it. The humans did not withstand the signal. "Hierarch," she said carefully. "They experienced its full effect. Medical scans confirmed elevated stress hormones, accelerated heart rates, neurological patterns consistent with extreme fear. They were terrified. Yet they did not surrender. Hierarch Sylvain observed, her serpentine body coiling tighter around her throne. That is not possible. The signal creates certainty of doom. It bypasses rational thought entirely. The humans appear to possess an unusual relationship with fear, Hierarch. They acknowledge it, experience it fully, but retain the ability to function despite it. Their captain described it as, Vethkora accessed her memory implant for the exact words, being absolutely terrified, and still doing what needs to be done. Silence filled the chamber like a held breath. Insanity, muttered Hierarch Kroth, his massive bulk shifting on his reinforced throne. They must be mentally defective. Brain damage. Genetic flaw. I considered that possibility. Vethkora replied. But their behavior does not suggest impairment. They negotiated coherently, displayed tactical awareness, showed concern for their crew. They appeared disciplined, as if fear were simply another variable to account for rather than a force to obey. Preposterous. Moxtal's voice chimed like breaking glass. 12,000 years. 600 species. The signal has never failed. Not once. These humans are lying, somehow masking their true response. Permission to speak, hierarchs. A voice called from the observer's gallery. All eyes turned to the speaker. Commander Reldin. A young officer, who had served under Vethkora for only 2 years. Reldin's skin flickered through several colors, before settling on the pale blue of uncertain respect. Granted, Moxtal said, though his tone suggested he was already regretting it. Reldin descended to the floor, moving with the careful precision of someone entering a predator's den. I was present during the encounter. I witnessed the human response. With respect, hierarchs, I believe Commander Vethkora's assessment is correct. The humans were afraid, but they had. He struggled for words. Frameworks for managing that fear. Protocols. Training, cultural context. Elaborate. Sylvain commanded. The humans' captain, Chen, referenced historical events while under the signal's influence. Plagues. Wars. Something called burning buildings. Their species appears to have encountered existential threats repeatedly throughout their history. They've developed psychological tools for Din's skin flickered yellow. For accepting fear as temporary, rather than absolute. Every species has faced danger. Kroth rumbled. Every species has known fear. None have resisted the signal. With respect, Hierarch, Reldin said. And Vethkora noted the subtle change in his posture, less deferential than before. Perhaps the other species were never given the opportunity. The signal worked immediately. Surrender was instantaneous. But what if it worked, because those species had no cultural context for resisting? What if the humans are simply the first species to have already learned how? The chamber fell silent again. But this time the quality of the silence was different. Vethkora recognized it from battlefields. The moment when experienced soldiers realized they'd underestimated an enemy. This is unacceptable, Moxtal said finally. The Dominion's authority rests on the certainty of submission. If one species can resist, others will hear of it. Our entire structure could collapse. Then we eliminate them, Croth suggested. Destroy their homeworld before they can spread word of their resistance. Ensure no other species learns what occurred. That may prove complicated, Vethkora said carefully. The humans have shared their location with their government. If we attack Earth and succeed, we gain nothing but the certainty that humanity's allies, if they have any, will know we murder species who refuse submission. If we attack and fail. She didn't need to complete the thought. You believe these primitives could resist our fleets? Selvain's voice dripped with condescension. I believe, Hierarch, that a species which can function under the signal's maximum intensity might possess other unexpected capabilities. And I believe that attacking them would confirm their decision not to submit was correct. So we do nothing. Moxtal's crystalline body flashed red with anger. Allow them to parade their resistance before the galaxy. I propose we observe, Vethkora said. Grant them temporary autonomous status. Watch how they interact with other species. Learn their capabilities. Understand how they think. The signal failed because we didn't understand them. We will not make that mistake twice. You speak of study as if these humans were colleagues, Croth accused. They are subjects. Subjects who have refused the Dominion's rightful authority. They are an anomaly, Vethkora corrected. And anomalies must be understood before they can be controlled. The hierarchs exchanged glances. A complex communication of light, pheromones, and subsonic vibrations that excluded all others from the conversation. Vethkora waited, maintaining her posture of respect, even as her mind raced. She hadn't told them everything. Hadn't mentioned the way her crew had watched the humans with something beyond fear or anger. Hadn't reported that 3 of her officers had filed requests for psychological evaluation after the encounter, troubled by dreams where they were the ones being watched, judged, found wanting. Hadn't admitted that she herself kept replaying Captain Chen's words. We learned something. Fear doesn't have to stop you. For 12,000 years, the Dominion had ruled through absolute certainty. The certainty that resistance meant annihilation. That fear meant surrender. That power meant safety. But what happened when certainty met something it couldn't break? Very well, Moxtal said at last. The humans will be observed. But at the first sign, they spread their resistance to other species. We will act. Commander Vethkora, you will establish a monitoring station in their space. Gather intelligence. Find their weakness. And if they have none, hierarch. Everything has a weakness, Moxtal said with absolute confidence. Even gods. You will find theirs. Vethkora bowed, all 4 arms crossing her thorax in acknowledgement. As she turned to leave, she caught Reldin's eye. The younger officer's skin had shifted to a pale green she couldn't quite identify. Hope, fear, curiosity? Perhaps all 3. 16 light, years from Earth, USS Endeavour, Captain's ready room, Sarah Chen sat alone. Hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She stared at the stars through the viewport, but her mind was elsewhere. 3 days since the encounter. 3 days of writing reports, debriefing her crew, sending detailed accounts. Back to Earth via quantum relay. 3 days of watching her people try to process what they'd experienced. The fear had been real. God, it had been real. It was like every nightmare she'd ever had compressed into a single moment of absolute certainty that something vast and hungry was about to consume her. The kind of fear that made you want to curl into a ball and hide and promise anything, if it would just stop. She'd wanted to surrender. Every instinct had screamed at her to give in. But instinct was just one voice in the conversation. And humans had learned long ago that instinct could be wrong. Her comm chimed. "Captain, Dr. Okonkwo would like to see you. Send her in." Doctor Amara Okonkwo, the Endeavor's chief psychologist, entered carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who'd made a disturbing discovery. She was a tall woman with close, cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Captain, I've compiled the crew evaluations from the encounter," she said without preamble. "The results are concerning." "How bad?" 11 crew members are experiencing anxiety symptoms. 5 are having nightmares. 2 requested sedatives to sleep. Okonkwo paused. "But here's what's interesting. None of them want to go home." I asked everyone individually if they wanted to return to Earth, to leave the mission. Every single person said no. Chen blinked. "Even the ones having nightmares, especially them." Ensign Park said, and I quote, "My grandmother survived the Seoul evacuation during the resource wars. She was terrified every day. But she kept teaching, kept helping neighbors, kept living. If she could do that, I can handle a scary alien broadcast." "That's," Chen searched for words. "Typical," Okonkwo finished. "They're all referencing historical trauma, personal stories, cultural memories of surviving fear. It's like the entire species has been preparing for this moment without knowing it." Chen thought about her own reference points during those terrible seconds under the signal. Her grandfather, a firefighter, describing what it felt like to enter a burning building. Her mother, a surgeon, explaining how you keep your hands steady when a patient's life depends on it. Generations of humans who'd felt fear and done their duty anyway. Deader. "Okonkwo, do you think other species don't have those stories?" The psychologist sat down heavily. "I think they probably do. But maybe they were never allowed to remember them. If the first time you meet a superior force, that force makes you submit instantly, you never get the chance to discover you could have resisted. The fear becomes the answer instead of just a question. So we're not special. We're just the first ones to get the chance to try. Maybe. Or maybe we're the first ones crazy enough to have prepared for existential terror as a baseline human experience." Okonkwo smiled thinly. "Hard to say which is more accurate." Chen finally took a sip of her cold coffee, grimaced, and set it down. "The Dominion is going to be watching us now." "Yes. If we show weakness, they'll use it against us. Against all of humanity." "Yes. But if we show too much strength, if we threaten them, they might decide we're too dangerous to exist." "Also yes." Chen stood, moving to the viewport. Out there, somewhere in that vast darkness, an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years was questioning its certainty for the first time. "Then we do what humans have always done," Chen said quietly. "We stay afraid, we stay alert, and we keep moving forward anyway." Behind her, Okonkwo was silent for a moment. Then, Captain, I have to ask. When you were under the signal, experiencing that fear, what kept you standing? Chen thought back to those horrifying seconds. The pressure. The certainty of doom. And then, inexplicably, absurdly, she smiled. I kept thinking about my daughter's piano recital, she said. She was 7. She was supposed to play Mozart's Piano Sonata No. 16. Simple piece. But she was so nervous. Shaking. I could see her hands trembling on the keys. She looked at me in the audience, and I could see she wanted to run. What happened? She played the entire piece. Hit every note. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "Mama, I was so scared. But I did it anyway." Chen turned from the viewport, her eyes bright. That's what I thought about. My 7-year-old daughter, being brave. If she could do that for Mozart, I could do it for humanity. Okonkwo laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. We're going to confuse the hell out of these aliens, aren't we? Docker. Okonkwo, Chen said, moving back to her desk and pulling up the star charts. I think we already have. Dominion Monitoring Station Gamma 7. On the edge of human space. Sub. Commander Reldin watched the human transmissions with growing unease. The monitoring station was equipped with the Dominion's most sophisticated technology: quantum interceptors, neural pattern analyzers, cultural modeling AI. Everything needed to understand and eventually dominate a new species. But the more Reldin watched, the less he understood. The humans were sharing their encounter with the Dominion openly, broadcasting it. Not as propaganda, not as a threat, but as information. News. They called it First Contact Protocol Disclosure. He watched Captain Chen address what appeared to be a governing body on Earth. She described the signal honestly, the terror, the pressure, the desire to surrender. She didn't hide her fear or pretend it hadn't affected her. But fear is not control. Chen said to the assembled humans, "We were afraid. We will likely be afraid again. But we chose our path based on our principles, not our fear. And I believe that's the most human thing we could have done." The assembled humans, hundreds of them, representing different factions and nations, stood and applauded. They were celebrating their fear, celebrating their resistance. Reldin's skin flickered through a dozen colors as he tried to process this. In Dominion space, such a moment would be seen as weakness. A commander admitting to fear would be removed, possibly executed. Fear was failure, but these humans seemed to view it as validation, proof of something. Sub. Commander. His communications officer called out, "We're detecting increased human activity. Multiple vessels launching from their home system. Military vessels. Negative. They appear to be science ships, exploration craft, heading in various directions." Reldin pulled up the trajectory plots. The humans were scattering throughout the sector, not in a defensive posture, but in an expansion pattern. As if they'd just confirmed the galaxy was full of other beings and decided to go meet them all. They're not afraid, the communications officer said, confused. After facing the signal, after learning about the Dominion's power, they should be fortifying their homeworld. Instead, they're exploring. No. Reldin said slowly, understanding dawning. They are afraid. That's why they're exploring. They're afraid of staying isolated, of being unprepared, of not knowing what's out there. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense. Reldin replied, his skin settling into a color that signified deep thought. For humans, fear is not a stop sign. It's a compass. It tells them where to pay attention, where to be cautious, but not where to stop moving. He thought back to the encounter, aboard the unbroken Talon. The way Captain Chen had gripped her chair, but stayed standing. The way she'd acknowledged the terror, but continued speaking. For the Dominion, fear was the end of resistance. For humans, fear was just the beginning. Sir? The communications officer said, his voice uncertain. Should we report this to the hierarchs? Reldin hesitated. If he reported honestly, he'd have to admit that the humans were becoming more active, more curious, more engaged. Precisely the opposite of what the signal should have caused. The hierarchs would see this as failure. His failure. But if he didn't report it, if he hid the truth, that would make him like them. Like the humans. Choosing action despite fear. Yes, he said finally. Report everything. The hierarchs need to know what we're facing. As the transmission prepared, Reldin found himself wondering something he'd never questioned before. If humanity could function under maximum signal intensity, what else could they endure? And more troublingly, if the Dominion's ultimate weapon had failed, what did the Dominion actually have left? 12,000 years of certainty was beginning to crack. And in the void between stars, humanity was spreading out to explore, carrying their fear with them like a torch in the darkness.